Hey guys!
Hey guys, this is Michelle and that's Mark.
It is. And this is
It's
Mark
Mark
and
and
Michelle.
Michelle.
Yay! And we are going to depart from the symptoms thingy tonight and talk about a subject that you guys need to know more about in depth, because it's one of the reasons that medical medium recommends healing. And after I get done expounding on the subject and Michelle talking about it and that kind of stuff, yeah, I see that look. And you're going to understand the need why we keep pressing the heavy metal detox smoothie.
Right, and this really came up because I posted the 2 stories about myself and Mark, and with our pictures of us drinking the smoothie, and then we had a lot of response to that. And then there's been other metal questions. So and then Mark had some really interesting things that he said to me the other day, and I said, you need to write that down and we need to talk about it. So here we are.
Here we are. Well, I did a little bit of research. A lot of this stuff is stuff I already knew, probably stuff you guys already know, but there is some stuff that you guys didn't know, and which I find very interesting, and you will too, I hope. But to start with, heavy metals, the term heavy metals means too many different things. And a Scottish scientist, maybe this is about 5 years ago, did a survey of all the definitions of heavy metals. And he said, basically, the term is, hey, Shinzuma, the term heavy metals is almost useless, because the term can mean many different metals, and many times not even the same ones. And then some metals aren't necessarily heavy if you take the literal meaning of the term and that kind of stuff.
Is that like heavy water? Is that the same kind of heavy?
No. Heavy water has to do with the number of, with the isotope of water, or the isotope of hydrogen. It's H2 instead of H. Well, that's not exactly the way to explain it. The hydrogen is an isotope of hydrogen. It isn't the normal naturally occurring isotope of hydrogen.
Okay, so it's not
considered
the same.
Yeah, right. It's not the same. It has to do more with isotopes than it does with the weight of the metal. Weight of the metal, or in this case, the weight. Well,
So
I don't know.
when they say heavy metals, do they literally mean metals that are heavy?
Some and some not.
Okay.
That's why that Scottish scientist said the definition was kind of really pointless. But the metals that we normally think of as heavy metals: mercury, lead, silver, gold, platinum would be another one, and sometimes we lump aluminum in with that. But as I saw in one article, aluminum isn't necessarily a heavy metal all the time. Some people say it is, some people say it isn't. Now, those people being, I guess, researchers and scientific researchers and doctors and that type of thing. So the whole point here is, though, there's all kinds of metals you can be poisoned by, right? The list is pretty large, but I saw aluminum, cadmium, chromium,
Mercury,
arsenic, mercury, lead, silver, gold, platinum, chromium. Did I say chromium? Yeah. And but the list goes on. There were quite a few others, things that you wouldn't think of, and so, or that you didn't realize were metals. And metals on the periodic table, if you remember that from chemistry class, metals are on one side and non-metals on the other side. But most of the things that we think of as metals are definitely on the metal side. So let's just talk about a few of them and not go into all that other stuff, because that would take way too much time. Start with mercury. We all know that mercury affects the brain. It's called a neurotoxin. Not in the sense of like a viral neurotoxin. It's not biological in this sense. It is chemical, straight chemical, and mercury compounds, when they get in your bloodstream, lodge anywhere where there can be nerves. So that isn't just the brain. Although the reason that we associate mercury in the brain is because when mercury is in the brain, you get behaviors. You get odd behaviors because of it, right? You don't necessarily realize that mercury gets lodged in nerves and organs, major organs like the liver, the kidneys, the intestinal tract, skin, eyes, the optic nerve.
Yeah,
You know,
medical medium says eyesight is because of mercury, bad, poor eyesight.
And so wherever there are nerves, that's a place where mercury will deposit.
Do you know why? Is there some kind of magnetism or something?
No, that would be a whole nother area of study.
So you don't know?
I don't know, no, but I'm sure scientists know. You know, it probably has to do with the types of nerves and how susceptible they are to certain metal poisonings and this kind of thing. Because lead is very similar, a different metal, obviously, but mercury can get lodged in all of those places, but it's mainly known as a neurotoxin, a chemical neurotoxin. And then, excuse me, mercury can also, there's a disease, and I think if I remember the name correctly, it's called Minamata's disease. Studied in Japan from the 30s through the 60s. They still have court cases ongoing because of that disease and mercury deposits in soil and water and that type of thing. But let me tell you where your biggest exposure is to mercury. And it's not broken thermometers. It's seafood. Methyl mercury. That's why at Whole Foods, when our company buys fish, we test it all for methyl mercury before we buy it. Because seafood is a huge deposit, a huge area to find methyl mercury. And that is one of the more milder mercury toxins that you can get, but that's where we get exposed to it the most and accumulate it. Now, let's see, what was it? Oh,
let me just add, medical medium suggests 3 fish if you feel like you have to have fish.
There you go, good idea.
To have wild caught only salmon, haddock, and halibut.
Wild caught salmon, wild caught halibut, and wild caught haddock. That's what she said.
That's what
he said.
And at Whole Foods, you know, it's tested at least.
Now, somebody may ask the question, well, what about farm raised? I'm thinking he probably says this, but the reason he does not recommend farm raised is because of all the viruses and bacteria and things like that.
Well, they put a lot of antibiotics
in
the water.
Antibiotics as well. So between the viruses and the bacteria getting spread among the fish between themselves, and then the antibiotics as well, I hate to say it, but your food's kind of poisoned.
Yeah.
And something that I did not know tonight, or it didn't register in my brain fully until tonight, was that antibiotics are used as food preservatives in chicken, in poultry. So maybe not just chicken, but in poultry, in fish, and what was the other thing?
You just told me and I can't remember.
Oh. Well, I know it's used in some cheeses.
Well, I said that.
Yeah, because apparently I had said that somewhere. But I'll have to remember what the other one was. But
it was another meat.
Wasn't chicken, fish.
Was it beef?
Oh, canned foods.
Oh, canned, yeah.
Canned foods. And it makes sense considering that anaerobic bacteria like Clostridium botulinum proliferate in canned goods where there's no air. So, interesting. I would not have expected. That was real news to me.
Aside from the fact that your can might be aluminum.
Well, that too.
You might also have antibiotics inside your food.
Inside your canned aluminum food. Right.
Which brings to mind that show that we watched where those guys, the Vanuatu guys, couldn't believe people were eating canned food.
There was, and I don't remember the name of that show now, but it was 2010, and it was a really good show. But they brought some native islanders from the island of Vanuatu in, I think it was French Polynesia, and they brought them to the United States, and they took these native guys around to different places in the U.S. to meet different American families. So they went to the South, they went to New York, they went to
Montana.
Right, they went to the northern central United States, they went to California, and these guys were really blown away by how dead our food was.
Yeah.
And they actually said, this food is not living.
Yeah.
That was not a direct quote, but that was the essence of what they said. And because they saw, I think it was a family in Montana opening cans up, and they were just like, wow. And frozen food. They didn't, and their point was they didn't see any fresh food. No fresh veggies, no fresh fruits, and fresh meat, I'm guessing, And something else you have to think about is fresh meat here. They don't test fresh meats here, even the ones that we get at Whole Foods, for heavy metal, the presence of heavy metals.
Right, only fish.
Only fish. They don't even test poultry for that. I mean, it would cost too much to test every head of cattle in a herd for heavy metals and then to detox them. They don't do that.
Yeah.
And
so anytime you eat meat, you risk having metals.
Well,
among many other things. I mean, viruses.
Antibiotics.
Yeah.
And so those are things that you have to keep in mind when you cheat. Michelle made mention of that, or did you and I maybe just talked about it. Someone was talking about, well, can I just detox from heavy metals once? I think that was the comment. And Michelle's like, no.
You will always.
You have to, even Medical Medium says that. You have to periodically do a round of the heavy metal detox smoothie, which is our whole reason for talking about this tonight. So other metals that we think of, lead. Lead is also a neurotoxin. But lead has also been implicated in causing cancers. Lung cancer.
Also pica.
Pica. For those of you who don't know, pica is picky eating.
It's eating non-food items.
Exactly. Exactly. That's right.
Non-food items.
It's eating non-edible items, things that aren't actually food. And lead has been shown to be the cause of that, of pica. And so, but it causes kidney cancers, liver cancers, nervous system cancer, skin cancer. This is just lead. And see, lead also causes bad behaviors, right? And I've seen a lot of people make a big deal out of lead and autism. Well, I think it's mercury and lead and aluminum in autism. And so it is vitally important that you detox yourself and your kids.
Tell the story about leaded gas.
Oh, okay. Here you go. And I didn't know this. A lot of us are old enough to remember leaded gas here in the U.S. and in other countries as well. But here in the U.S., we used leaded gasoline. We don't anymore, but we used leaded gasoline from the late 1930s until the late 1970s.
I got several whiffs of it, I remember.
Yeah. We all remember the
smell.
The leaded gas. And so the leaded gasoline was to help engine performance. Well, starting in the 70s, they noticed that with more lead being dumped into the environment here, especially alongside roads. Now, alongside roads, highways, and other roads, the soil contained much higher concentrations of lead than further away from the roads, right? So that means that gasoline that leaked would leak into the ground next to the roads.
I guess it was exhaust. It would come out.
Probably, well, that as well. And in fact, it was probably more likely exhaust. Now, how often do people leak gasoline?
Right.
You know, but still, you would get some of that too. But exhaust makes more sense. Well, never mind that we got lead in the atmosphere as well. So they found that lead deposited in the soil on either side of the road, when it rains, would run off into the groundwater and then into the fields next to the roads and poison all that soil and the groundwater. Well, they noticed a direct correlation between the rise in violent crime with the rise of the use of leaded gasoline. And so when we stopped using leaded gasoline here in the late 70s and early 80s, about 10 years later, they noticed violent crime dropping off. I guess because it was being processed out of the environment and out of people, at least to a certain extent. But if you stop and think about that, lead causing bad behaviors, there you go. A direct correlation in the rise of violent crime with the rise in the use of leaded gasoline. How more causative can you get than that? And so never mind that all of those people who had who committed violent crimes probably passed that lead on down to their kids. So really, these people went to jail for something not really their fault, because they got poisoned by lead, caused their brains to not work correctly, committed violent crimes, and went to jail.
I think a lot of people in jail have medals.
I think everybody's got medals, but I imagine that people in jail, to go with what she said, have more medals than other folks.
So the other night we talked about how metals actually get in the way of receptors and things, and I wanted you to speak to that.
Okay. For those of you who don't know, some of you do, but I imagine most of you don't know, on the outside of every cell, there are little spots called receptors. And those receptors are there to receive chemicals, chemical compounds. What they are biological compounds. That's what they're supposed to be. All right. And they're proteins. They're chemical messengers like hormones, fats, things like that. So those receptors receive those biological chemicals, right? Just like that. And then they activate the cell to do something, right? Now, the problem with heavy metals is a lot of those heavy metals are the same size as those receptors.
Shape probably too.
And so this is an oversimplification of it, but you get the point. And here's a good example that I can give you directly from food. Wheat flour in this country has been bleached with bromide. Bromide is a compound, which I think it's Br2. It's bromine, but it's two atoms of bromine connected together, bonded together to form bromide, right? Well, that bromide is used to make white wheat flour, right? They bleach it. Now, bromides fit inside many of the receptors on the outside of cells.
It's particularly thyroid.
That's right, particularly thyroid.
Right.
Right. So that means that as a chemical compound, bromide is the same size as
and shape
as triiodothyronine and levothyroxine, T3 and T4, the thyroid hormones. So when bromides get into the receptors for the thyroid hormones can't get there. When the thyroid hormones can't get into the receptors, then the thyroid gland doesn't know what to do. Well, the receptors are all filled with these bromides. They're not working. They're not getting the hormones. So the thyroid gland and the thyroid hormones aren't working together like they should. And you're basically being poisoned by the bread and the pasta and everything else you eat.
Right.
When they've been bleached, when your flour has been bleached by bromides. That's why unbleached flour is much better for you, because it hasn't had those chemicals put in it to make the wheat flour white.
But it still feeds strep
It
and
does,
viruses,
because
so
then
it's
there's
still
that
not
too.
good for you.
Right. Until you get healthy and you get all that control. But still, you can't go back to eating 1.5 pounds of pasta
Every night.
You won't even want to do that once a week, to be honest.
Yeah, that would be like once every 2 months.
Yeah, and you'd be
or once a year.
Yeah, maybe. You know, maybe 4 ounces every couple weeks or so. You know, but that's the thing. These chemicals that we thought were doing great things in making our food pretty but they're killing us. So the whole point of Medical Medium is to show you how to repair the damage caused by all of that pretty food. Because I used to eat lots and lots of pasta. Just ask her. Way too much. And, you know, for a few years, I didn't gain any weight because of it. But after a while, I started to. And so I don't eat pasta anymore. But the whole point is Medical Medium is trying to say, look, all this old style food is killing you. All this, the way you've been doing things hasn't worked out. So you need to do it this way. You need to do the way I'm telling you, which is why he has that heavy metal detox smoothie, because bromides can be detoxed by that heavy metal detox smoothie as well. So the whole point of that heavy metal detox smoothie is to get rid of things like mercury that causes neural damage, lead that causes neural damage, and not just possible cancers, but plenty of cancers. And then mercury, and lead both cause bad behaviors that you don't want, an inoperative, dysfunctional brain.
Aluminum, which is like Alzheimer's.
Exactly. CDC said today, I saw this as an article. Would have to corroborate this, but the CDC said today there's been a spike in deaths related to Alzheimer's and dementia over the past 20 years, and they're wondering why.
Yeah, we'll just stop there.
Yeah, because
Mark hasn't looked that up yet.
Right. Somebody else speculated on something else, on flu shots, but we'll leave it at that. So, aluminum, and there was another lead.
Cadmium? Chromium?
No, arsenic.
Oh.
And arsenic is a semi-metal. It's not like you would think of. It's a grayish powder. But arsenic has been linked to many different cancers as well, according to what I read. So the heavy metal detox smoothie is geared to remove all of those things, right? And it not only that, it also fights strep and viruses.
I saw a post on Instagram today, a woman who's doing the Medical Medium, and she posted from when she started what her metals were in her body. Mm-hmm. And then 4 months later had them redone. It was amazing, the reduction in metals in 4 months.
Mm-hmm. Was she doing the heavy metal detox smoothie every day?
Probably.
Yeah.
I didn't read that deeply into it.
But see, think about that. That is as good a proof as you need, right? Science doesn't actually prove anything. It just lends more and more credibility to its ideas, right? So, but that is some really good, I would call that proof. Now, you don't have to, but knowing what I went through, and then her watching me go through it.
Well, and what I went through.
Well, and
that's pretty cool too.
Exactly, right? So between the two of us, our brains are functioning better than ever because of that heavy metal detox smoothie. So, guys,
continue with the heavy metal detox smoothie.
Continue with the celery juice. Continue with the lemon water. Remember, guys, we do coaching. So stop getting upset about, I don't know what to do here. I don't know what to do there. All you got to do, contact us, and we'll get you through it.
Yeah.
Right? We have an hourly rate, and we can do that. So also go to www.healyourautism.com/buy the book, BUY the book, and our book, Heal Your Autism's Do-It-Yourself Guide, Healing Begins in Your Kitchen. Buy the book and all the freebies that come with it, and that'll get you started.
Yep.
Then you can come to us for the more advanced stuff, We can coach you through it. All right. And then you will definitely want to go to www.healyourautism.com, because then our book, Buried Alive, One Man's Journey Out of Autism, is an excellent motivating read.
Yes.
Right? So that ends our show for tonight, and we'll see you guys tomorrow night.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.